Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Today, we're going to be talking about illegal dumping with the one and only Frank Calderon from Miami-Dade Solid Waste Department. Thanks for being here, Frank.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
So when we were kids, we would throw stuff out the window, and occasionally, you're teenagers, you had a trunk full of stuff, you just go by a neighbor's and you throw it in the yard and hope that you didn't get caught. But illegal dumping in Dade County is a big deal.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us about what time is being spent on illegal dumping, and how do you catch the bad guys?
We catch the bad guys in a variety of ways. Some of them we find evidence in the pile that links back to the person that originated or where it originated from. We've had cases where they've found, and it was a homeowner, they trace it back to home. They go to the home and they find out that the person had hired a contractor to do some remodeling work or whatever. And in the contract was a proper disposal of the material. So when they showed us that, okay, you're not the homeowner, you're off the hook. Now we're going after the contractor. They've caught contractors doing that. We also have hidden cameras. Some of them are live stream hidden cameras, and some of them are, after the fact, they record and we check it after the fact.
When illegal dumping takes place in a city, not the county, but in a city, does the city go pick it up, or do they hire you as a vendor to go pick it up?
That is a good question. We do have 10 cities that we provide full service. So we also provide code enforcement, and if illegal dumping takes place there, we take care of it.
So I just want to know, for my well-heeled friends in Pinecrest, do people do illegal dumping in Pinecrest?
That I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I imagine that even there you'll find some, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
So let's talk again about if there's, for instance, I remember seeing a boat not too long ago. It was probably 25 feet long, right? And just dumped there. Motors off. I saw plenty of people over some time looking in, and maybe they were cops looking for an ID number or something. What happens to this boat that's out there for a week to a month before the county says we need to do something?
Well, the first thing that happens is an enforcement officer goes and takes a look and see if they can find out, determine the ownership, determine, how, who left it there, that sort of thing. At some point, once it's been identified as illegal dumping, we'll go out and pick it up.
And where do you take old boats and old cars that are just left on the side of the road?
Old cars, I don't know, because they're metal. Old boats, since they use a lot of fiberglass, I think they end up just going to landfill.
So here we are in 2024, and this great nation of ours, it doesn't seem like we've made a lot of headway. And what do we do with the stuff the garbage that we create? But looking down the road 5 or 10 years, do you think there'll be some changes in the way that we handle our garbage?
I think so. I know that's one of the mayor's goals is zero waste. So it's a goal that it's not going to happen overnight. Don't know how long it'll take to actually get to zero waste, but it's a goal that you reach after. I remember back in the day when I was a young cub working, going to the college, I studied a gentleman who was famous in advertising. I cannot think of his name right now. Leo, can't think of the last name. Anyway, he had this saying, reach for the stars. You may not get them, but you're not going to end up with a handful of dirt.
He had a big ad agency.
Yes, in Chicago, I think.
Yeah, if I'm lucky, I'll remember the last name.
Yeah.
So right now, when the green cans, people come and pick up the green cans, the county, they take that, they put it back on the truck. Typically, if the incinerator was working, how does the county choose what goes into the incinerator and what goes into the landfill? How does that work?
Well, most of the waste was sent there. Sometimes it was a case of, there's certain materials that obviously can't, like, big example, mattresses. Because they're a mix of material. Mattresses have some of them have foam in them, some of them have a cloth material, cotton batting, that sort of thing, with springs, with metal springs. And that kind of a mixed material just would not work. It wouldn't shred easily. So those things are typically pulled out. Any metals that we saw were removed. We had magnets there that were removed. Most particularly the barbecue canisters, the gas canisters, the propane canisters people use for barbecues. So take those out.
We're talking about in the green dumps and the green cans that go into the truck. It goes onto a loading floor, And it goes on a conveyor belt?
Tipping floor. When we had the resources recovery facility, yes, it would go on a conveyor belt. A long series of conveyor belts, actually.
Wow. So sometimes people think if they put their really personal documents into the garbage that it's gone. No, it's not.
It could be, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee.
So,
that's why usually you want to, if you have personal documents you don't want anybody to know about, there are companies that'll do shredding and they'll certify and they'll even let you shred on the spot where you can see them do it, that sort of. Or you can have a shredder at home.
Yeah, it's really amazing to watch it and you see it chew it up. And I tell people, get the biggest one you can afford, because if you got a small one, when you put too many sheets in it, it jams it up. So anyway, we use one here and then also, at the house. So when we didn't have a shredder, somebody asked me to dispose of their financial, she had died and the family asked me to take care of it. So I didn't have a shredder. I didn't want to rip it up like that. So I got one of our raccoon traps and I put all the papers there and put it on fire.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to want to. Yeah.
So, okay. So getting back to illegal dumping, let's talk about what is considered littering. If a policeman saw you do the difference between littering and dumping.
Typically, littering is smaller amounts, although littering and illegal dumping both fall under the same law, which is called the Florida Litter Law. Small amounts of, a bag of like fast food wrappers and stuff, a cup, a fast food cup, or the lid and the straw, chewing gum, the little foil paper comes in, that sort of thing, pack of cigarettes, those things, that's typically litter. Bigger items is what is considered illegal.
For the people that don't give it much thought, if you have a cup of soda, iced tea, water that you got at a fast food place, and you drank it and you threw it out the window, that could be floating around for a couple of months before it finally winds up in the garbage.
It'll be on the street. It may not even wind up in the garbage. It may wind up in the bay. It may wind up in a canal. It may wind up in the storm drainage system. And a couple of weeks later, after a big rainstorm, you're going to complain that the streets are flooded and nobody does anything. Well, you just contributed to it by throwing that cup out of your car.
15 years ago, when there was these two 100-year back-to-back floods, where I lived there, the water was almost up to your knees. And I'm looking at all the stuff that's floating on top everywhere. All that stuff that was formerly in the ground. So lots of times we know there's not-for-profits in schools and just local organizations that want to do their share and pick up littering on litter on the street. What are some of the steps they could take to find out what's available?
Well, we have a program called Let's Clean Things Up. We typically with that program, we typically work with commissioners in their districts where they have areas that fall under our purview, and we typically provide the gear, the bags, and we'll have people that come out and take the garbage after it's been picked up. We've worked with volunteer groups before. We work with the commissioners before. They typically, a lot of times, they'll have groups of volunteers that'll come out. And it's not just us. You have the state also has a program along state roads, if I'm not mistaken. That's called Adopt a Street. So that's another avenue.
High school kids can get community hours, which they need.
Yes.
And what a great thing, because when they drive by with their folks, I cleaned that up. Yep. Don't throw that stuff out the window anymore, because I picked it up. So you had mentioned earlier about the cameras throughout the county. Obviously, there's some hot spots. And tell us about a recent time that, because of the cameras, either recording them or live, that you were able to apprehend some bad guys.
Well, it's not as recent as it once was, but one of the ones that pop into my mind happened not too long ago with a case of three brothers. Two of them were twins. The twins were caught. The third brother somehow, I don't know if they ever ended up catching them later. They were caught live. There was a live stream camera at the site where they went. It was a hot spot, and we have an enforcement officer monitoring. And when they saw that there were people illegally dumping, they dispatched the nearest officer to come out and catch them, and they dispatched the police as well. And the police, shortly after they left, the vehicle was like one of those big rental moving trucks. It was easy to identify, so they caught them, and they both got arrested. And the third brother just took off.
It's really amazing. They must have felt so good in the seconds after they left. Oh, we finally got rid of all this stuff.
Yeah.
And in today's environment, everybody has a camera and everybody knows how to use it. That'd be silly to do it because you just never know.
It's risky, yeah. It's more riskier than it has been.
Yeah. Okay. So, and what is potential fine for that if you're found guilty of illegal dumping?
The fine starts out at $250 plus a $10 fee. It starts out. That's if you're not in a commercial vehicle and it's a relatively small amount. Which that's that distinction. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know what is small and what's larger. But if you're in a rented moving van, it becomes commercial. So at that point, you're starting at $1,000 for the fine.
Okay.
So, and it goes up.
So be careful, folks.
Yes.
All right. So, can we talk a little bit about hurricane season? All right.
Sure.
And then hurricanes typically mean that people either prepare ahead of time as far as their landscaping and junk in their yard, or soon thereafter. You know, that we're on our second week of September. So far, we've been lucky, but there's still time that people can go ahead and book for a bulky waste pickup. So once you tell us about
there
that.
is still potentially, I think that there was one storm out in the, don't know if it's a Caribbean, in the east of in the Atlantic somewhere. They said there was a 70, not quite a storm yet, but a system that had the 70% potential. Just saw the weather report this morning. I didn't see exactly where it was, but you know, that's why we tell people do it before the season starts. We're in the middle of the season now. It's been relatively quiet, but you know, it's all dependent on supply and demand. How the appointments are now, there's so many that they can do per day, and you know, today books up, the next day books up, and you're now looking 3 days ahead. You know, it's one of those tricky things. So my advice is, if you know you got stuff you got to get rid of, go and check you can go and check online.
And so
to see how far advanced.
Yeah, and landscaping stuff, got to call 3 days ahead of time. I mean, you got to call, and
you can set it out 3 days ahead of time. But yeah, you can call 311, or you can go online and you can see how far, or even 311, they'll tell you how far, you know, to give you a picture, an idea of if you have the time to before anything potentially threatens us.
And people can go through. It doesn't just have to be landscaping stuff. It can be other stuff that they want to also throw out.
Old furniture, old appliances, that sort of thing. Yeah.
If I go home and my furniture's not at my house, I'm going to know where it went. Thank you very much. So old furniture, right? Old shelves. Susan, did you hear? So, and the county can pick it up.
Yes.
So people can call 311 and they can book it that way, or they go on and
miamidade.gov/solid waste.
And we're running the address right on the show right now.
But you do have to set that's the thing. You have to set the appointment before you set the stuff out. Very important.
So, you remember the last couple of hurricanes. I don't quite remember when they were, but a lot of trees fall and a lot of limbs are on the ground. If there's a lot of damage, the people they don't have to call. Is that correct?
That's a tricky one. They should probably call anyway.
Right.
Irma was so widespread. That was the last big one that I remember, that we ended up going over. I think they even did a second pass. They went through every place twice to pick up stuff, and that was like pretty much countywide.
Okay. When there's a big storm, there's a lot of landscape, a lot of trees, a lot of debris. You got to tell us, where does that stuff go?
That stuff ends up going to a landfill.
Okay.
When we had the resources recovery facility, we would incinerate a lot of that stuff. Now, when there's a storm and FEMA gets involved, FEMA reimburses us. We have a procedure that we have to follow. That's what we did with Irma. And what happened there was we have contracted landfill space outside, so we don't have to use our own landfills. We ended up taking it to another landfill. But part of the process there is reducing the volume of it. So when you've accumulated all this tree, and the tree branches can really stick out a lot. We're also supposed to grind it down. We ground it down so that it reduces the volume of landfill, and that's a FEMA requirement as well.
You put it through the big grinder.
Yes.
And if the kiddies ever seen that, it's an amazing process. You put in this
These things are huge. I think they look like a fountain type of. It's not like a regular, you know, like the shredder that you see on the street that FPL, for example, uses, where they just in the back and it comes out. This thing was huge. From what I remember from those years, from the year that we had Irma, was it looked like a huge fountain type of thing. But I never actually got close and saw it in operation.
So anyway, that's one of the advantages when we have that, to be able to see how that stuff look. And on the county's website, can people take a tour of the facilities with videos?
Yes, we do have videos of the different facilities on our, including the recycling, which is a contractor where the materials go.
So let's speak about recycling. So in the last 6 months or so, the county has some new vendors that can take products that we didn't take before, such as pizza boxes that have some grease in it.
Yes.
So when those pizza boxes are in there, how do they know which ones to keep and which ones to throw out? They don't.
Everything gets mixed in, and that's why we tell people to be careful. If it's too much grease, it can actually damage other. It's like the bad apple spoils a bunch. It can actually, the grease can kind of like soak through other even clean cardboard. That's why we tell people you have to sort it at your house, or at least not sort it, but at least if it has a lot of grease, just throw it in the garbage.
Frank, let's look at in the last 15 years, the number of cardboard boxes that are being consumed once or twice, right? It's gigantic. I don't know how many it is, but start multiplying it. In the old days, we would go to the store, we'd use the manufacturer's box that was there, and we'd put it into a plastic bag, and we'd take it home. And we would just throw out the other part. So here are these beautiful cardboard boxes. Sometimes I want to save them. I'm going, okay, so we'll wind up with 20 or 30 of them. I go, now what are you going to do? You've watched that transition go from they really didn't want them, I mean the recyclers, to like, we really want them. It's
Yes.
really high demand.
Yes.
For those. What are some other products that we look at as consumers as garbage, but as a high interest in that?
One of the biggest ones historically has always been metal, whether it's aluminum or ferrous, which is iron, can be picked up by a magnet, where aluminum can't be picked up by a magnet. Both have been in high demand as far back as I can remember. It's less expensive to process recycled metal than it is to process metal from the raw ore. Like, for example, aluminum made from I want to say the amount of energy saved, just energy alone, or power, not just electricity, but the fuel used by vehicles, is anywhere from like 70 to 90%. That's saved when you recycle aluminum versus producing it from raw ore.
And when we look at our roadway, I understand there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into our roads now, which is decreasing the cost and using that stuff, which is really sort of amazing. Let's talk a little bit about that soda can. The ones that used to be so strong, if you could squeeze it with your hand, you were lucky. Now it's like, I'm just praying that it stands up, that it won't fall over. Really thin metal, but we all got used to it. The bottles used to be the plastic bottles used to be really much thicker. We just got used to it. On this soda can, how fast does that typically turn around before it's back into some other product?
With aluminum, I want to say it's very fast. It can be potentially within 6 to 8 weeks. It can be a new product. It can be a new can.
It's amazing. And it just keeps going.
Yeah,
and
aluminum can just be recycled over and over again.
Because it just keeps going in that pot. They melt it and then they formulate it. When do you think Miami-Dade might have a vendor that would love to have all those light brown grocery store bags that we get? The plastic
ones? I don't know.
It's really amazing how many we use. I mean, as a community, I know it's less. I can see that, and so for us, our He-Mans, it's no longer going to get 6 bags and bring them into the house. But clearly, those bags are so strong that you can pick them up, and they're almost indestructible, which really creates a problem for some of the machines.
That's why we don't recycle or don't accept them in our program. What we do tell people is there are places that will take them, that recycle filmy plastic, and that's the key. It's a very filmy plastic. They'll take, a lot of these places will take also like dry cleaner bags and other plastic. If you still get the newspaper in a plastic bag, you can take that as well. I know Publix, Walmart, those are 2 places off the top of my head. I don't want to play favorites. I'm pretty sure there are others, but as I always like to warn people, just check first. Don't come in with a handful into, some random place with a handful of plastic bags. Hey, I heard you recycle. No, check first. Check your local store, the store you go to anyway, once or twice a week, and see if they'll take it. And if they do, then you have a place you can bring them.
I was getting some coffee the other morning at McDonald's. I said, I don't want the receipt, but thank you. I said, what percentage of people tell you no? He said about half. I don't want the receipt, because I'm thinking what I do, I get it. I go, what am I going to do with this $5 receipt? Typically, I get it and put it in the back seat for another day to pick it up. There might be a point at which it'll be less and less that people want those less and less, because we already have it somewhere else. We just have to go get it, right? And it should be interesting to see how we change our habits where it'll become much more acceptable. So again, here we are in the middle of hurricane season. There might be another one that's out there. People should figure out if they use stuff around their house and clean old furniture, the shrubbery, right? They can call 311 or go to miamidade.gov/solid waste. They can go there for some tours if they want. And we're going to wind up in just a minute. Let's talk about your journey with the county. So why don't you tell us about that?
My journey with the county began in August 2000. As I've mentioned before, I'm not good in math, so I started in the year 2000.
Wow.
So that tells me whatever year it is. I know that's how many years I've been with the county. I started at the Water and Sewer Department. I was there for a few years.
Off of US 1?
Off of, but not the other. I know the place on Lejeune. Everybody remembers that because that's got the big facade, the prominent facade. It's actually at the Salzito, where the Village of Merrick Park now stands.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Then they built that, and they built a new building at the Douglas Road Metro Rail Station. That's where I worked out of that. I worked for the communications department for a year to help out with the 2004 presidential election, because they anticipated a lot of media, and we had media from all over the world that were there for that election. Mm-hmm. Went back to Water and Sewer for a few more years, and then I started at Solid Waste in 2009, and here I am. And
you used to be on the radio a long time ago.
I used to, I was behind the scenes a little bit. I didn't have a face for radios.
Rachel likes that one. So 24 years and a couple of weeks with Miami-Dade County. I know it's been a journey for you, and we appreciate you coming in every week and going over that. And I love you when you come here. I love it more when Jean Marie Massey shows up for recycling. She puts a smile on all our faces. And if we're really lucky, maybe Rachel will sit down with us and we can have a conversation about recycling. And by the way, my kids, this big, grandkids, they understand about littering, right? Keep the waterways clean, because they're in the water all the time with their canoes, sort of, all the time. Grandpa, you got to keep it clean. Don't throw anything out. And the little kids are watching us. So if you think you flick it out the window, they're not seeing it, but they are. Yeah. All right. Frank Calderon, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Again, folks, thank you for tuning in. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family.